Well, I finished shaving, so I guess I can start making a video. Today is Sunday, the 7th of September, 2025. I'm Jerry Blanchard. I go by Native Earthman on YouTube, and I also have Conical Shelters as a second YouTube channel. And I happen to be in love with teepees. Now, the question that often comes up and often gets argued, I got to find a place to put this stupid razor to get it out of the way. I guess I just got to put it on the ground. So the question that comes up that I see, give you a little background. I first got into teepees, or I saw my first teepee in 1973 in a little small town in Wisconsin called Wheeler, Wisconsin. I lived outside of Colfax, and Wheeler was a few miles away, and there was a hippie group that had a geodesic dome and a teepee, and we went by and visited, and I went inside, or at least looked inside my first teepee. It was living like people lived in it, like a house. There was I don't know, queen size bed or something inside there, and kind of like modern living. But I was really more in love with geodesic domes. But I got this idea, teepees were pretty cool. And I had been in 1973, I was 18? No, I was 20 years old. Anyway, but in my teenage years, I had been into wild edible foods. So how would you live without the present system of things that we live off of, the grocery stores and all that, and could it be done? So I got into wild foods. I started fishing a little bit, maybe shooting a rabbit or a squirrel or something once in a while, and I started to play around with it a little bit, got a little bit knowledgeable. And I was a hitchhiker too. I would hitchhiked out to Colorado once. Me and a friend and I, me and a friend, it's spring break in 1972 or something, maybe 72. We hitchhiked out to California, up to the state of Washington, and back to River Falls, Wisconsin, and I really enjoyed sleeping out under the bridges and living with a backpack and a sleeping bag, a minimalist type of lifestyle. And I had this thing where I wanted to, rather than buy things, I wanted to be able to make them myself. So once upon a time, I made a backpack frame out of bamboo, some bamboo fishing poles that I found somewhere. And I tents and stuff. I kept thinking, I want to make a tent. So I'm this research guy. I spend, I don't know, 6 months researching just about any subject. And I stumbled across some, I don't know, Ben Hunt's book or something on Indian crafts or whatever. And I found out that a teepee you could make a fire in, and I thought that was pretty cool. So I thought that was like the cat's meow. Anyway, I didn't really get that idea until later on, but I ran into my first teepee when I'm 20, and then in 1980 I joined the Army in 1974, and in 1980 I decided to actually make a teepee, and I found the book. It was a little paperback version of this book, The Indian Teepee by Reginald and Gladys Laubin. Those who are into teepees know about this book. And I got this book, and I saw that, I could make a teepee. So, but I actually couldn't do it. I got a hold of the canvas somehow. Oh yeah, I remember. I'm in Fort Jackson, South Carolina. I'm living off base, and I found a lady that made awnings, And so I contracted with her to make a 12-foot diameter Sioux style teepee. All I wanted her to do was to sew me up a semicircle. That's all I wanted, and then I would cut out the door, and I would uh, hand stitch in the lacing pinholes, and I would make the smoke flaps with the pockets and stuff, because I was making a Sioux style teepee as, you know, proposed by the Lawbins, which has become the most common teepee that non-natives use up until 2025, become quite popular. So I made this 12-foot teepee, and I traveled around with it. I took it up to my home in Wisconsin, set it up in a few places, and put it up in South Carolina once or twice, and eventually took it down to Panama with me because I got stationed again in Panama. And I let it, I made down, and when I got to Panama, I made poles out of bamboo. And I left there was a rainy season in Panama, a heavy rainy season. 7, 8 months of the year raining quite a bit, off for days on end, or often, for pretty often where it might get a day or two where it doesn't rain. But I left my teepee up, and it lasted a good 6 or 7 years of continuous living, because I think it's a living structure. And anyway, I burned it like you're supposed to, like burning the American flag. I read somewhere where the proper way to dispose of a teepee is to burn it, and I did, because it was all dry rotted and no good for nothing anyway. You couldn't do anything with it. But that was my first teepee. So that's my background on that. Basically, it's running into teepees in Wheeler, Wisconsin, and in the other big influence. I got all my teepee books here, and the other big influence that I had at the time. Boy, look at all this stuff, huh? Yeah. I don't have all the books in the world on teepees, but I got quite a few, and I have learned quite a bit about teepees in my 45 years of being into teepees. But here, I got a hold of one of these back in the 70s, and it says $5, and I ordered it here a couple of years ago on Amazon, and somebody sold it to me, I think, for $60. But I had one of these, and I had it in Panama, and I was a Gamma Goat ambulance driver, and I was working at School of the Americas at Fort Gulick, Panama Canal Zone, and I think I was out with Nicaraguan or Honduran soldiers, and I'm just parked out in the jungle. They're shooting something in the jungle. I don't know what they're doing. I'm not really paying attention to them. I'm just there in case somebody gets hurt. I put them in the ambulance and take them back to the aid station or to the hospital, whichever comes first. And so I had one of these in the front seat of my ambulance, and I was in the back of the ambulance and probably resting or something like that, and I came up and my book was missing.